detectives first arrived at the scene, we were there to serve a search warrant, and we knocked on the suspect's door. He asked to take a few minutes to get dressed, and our detectives remained outside for a few minutes. They thought he was stalling, so they had a key from the apartment manager, and so they keyed their way in, and they saw him there, sitting there on the bed with a gun in his hand. And it was a studio apartment, so it was very, very small. The detectives retreated, just got out of the way of the door, and they heard one gunshot wound and found that he had taken his life with one gunshot wound to the head. Our detectives didn't fire any shots, and all of this was captured on body-worn camera. He was pronounced dead at the scene. And so during the search of the apartment, there were a couple of items of interest, nothing really linking the homicide, but a couple of interesting items. One, there was a box in his closet with some important papers in it, and in it was a book called The Ultimate Evil, and it's a book about serial killers. And the second item, there was a suicide note. The suicide note appeared to be hastily written. It had the date 2016 on it, and we think that coincides probably with the time that Detective Sergeant Alanis interviewed him. And I don't think he'd been interviewed in quite some time prior to that. And we're still analyzing the note. It did not reference anything about the murder, and it was garbled, difficult to read, and again, we're doing some more forensic evidence on that. A couple of factors led to us actually going to the house. We went there to serve a search warrant with the intent to arrest him. We had enough evidence at that time, even independent of the search warrant, to make the arrest, and that was our intent. The investigation, when we first discovered the DNA, from when we sent some additional evidence items to an outside lab and found DNA on her items, his DNA on her items. And so after that, we had to do several things like re-interview people. But one of the things that was time-consuming was we recontacted everybody that had been in the church that night 43 years ago and took their DNA and their fingerprints. We wanted to make sure that we ruled them out. And so everything was a culmination of all of the investigation that they had done since the time that we discovered the DNA. I cannot speculate on why he committed suicide, but I think that he might have believed that his time was up. Currently, we're still processing the car that was left at his apartment building. We have that, and we're processing that. You know, this was a terrible, terrible crime, and I really want to express my deepest sympathy to the family, her husband at the time, her other family members. Our detectives worked very, very hard on this for many years. Technology is such now that we are able to make arrests and clear cases based on what we have, not only just the existence of DNA, but also the technology in finding DNA on surfaces. So we look at this as closure, and we believe that we had solid evidence to arrest and even convict Stephen Crawford for the murder of Arlis Perry.
What do you hope to find in the car?
You know, with a search warrant, you never know what you can find. We were hoping to find something that would link him directly to the crime. 43 years ago, sometimes that's not possible. But I'm not sure that we will find anything other than we could find written material. You know, you never know when you search, but our detectives are really familiar with the case, and in looking through the car, they'll know what could be of value.
Do you think that he might be connected to some other cases, and that's why you're going through this with a fine-tooth comb?
You know, we're going through it because we want to continue to follow up all leads. You never know with homicide suspects, especially some that are so random at this time. And during this time, there were a lot of serial killers in this area. Kemper in Santa Cruz, and it seemed to be a real difficult time in this area and surrounding areas for serial killers. So we'll look at that. We have a chart of when he was living in this area, the number of unsolved homicides versus when he was not living in the area. That was one that one of the media outlets gave to me a few minutes ago, but we're always looking at that. I know that there's a lot more work to do on this case, even though the suspect that I believe is the killer is dead.